The year was 1989. Michael Dudikoff stood in Canon Films' office while executives promised him the role of a lifetime, Spider-Man, the biggest superhero of all time, and it was his. But that film never got made, and within 5 years, the man who'd starred in some of the highest-grossing action films of the 80s couldn't get arrested in Hollywood. What happened between that promise and total erasure will make you question everything you think you know about who gets to be a star. The accidental actor picture this. It's 1954 in Torrance, California. A boy named Michael Dudikoff is born into a family with Russian and French-Canadian roots and absolutely no connection to show business. Zero. His father worked regular jobs, clocking in and out like millions of other Americans just trying to keep the lights on. His mother raised the family in a modest home where dreams of stardom weren't even on the table. The idea that their son would one day be promised the biggest superhero role in Hollywood, that would have seemed like pure fiction. Growing up in Southern California in the 60s and 70s, young Michael didn't have that burning desire you see in most actors. He wasn't the kid putting on shows for family gatherings. He wasn't memorizing movie lines or begging his parents for acting lessons. He was just a normal kid in a normal family, living a normal life. And that ordinariness would later become both his greatest asset and his biggest liability in an industry obsessed with manufactured personas. But here's the thing about Michael Dudikoff. He never wanted to be an actor, never dreamed about it as a kid, never took drama classes, never stood in front of a mirror practicing acceptance speeches or working on different accents. He stumbled into entertainment the way most people stumble into a career they didn't plan, through a side door they didn't even know existed. Sometimes the best careers aren't chosen, they just happen. In his early 20s, Dudikoff started modeling, not because he was chasing fame or trying to break into Hollywood, but because he had the look and someone offered him money, simple as that. He was tall, 6 feet with dark hair and striking features that photographers loved. That classic American look with just enough ethnic edge to be interesting. One modeling gig led to commercials. Commercials led to small television roles. By the early 1980s, he was getting bit parts on shows like Dallas, The Fall Guy, and Bloody Sins. Nothing glamorous, nothing that would make anyone remember his name. Just another face in the background of primetime television. And here's what made him different from every other struggling actor in Los Angeles. He wasn't training in martial arts like Chuck Norris, who'd been a champion before Hollywood came calling. He wasn't bodybuilding like Schwarzenegger, who'd turned muscles into a ticket out of Austria. He wasn't even particularly hungry for stardom, like most young actors clawing their way through auditions, desperate for any role that might lead to something bigger. Michael Dudikoff was just a guy taking jobs that came his way, completely unaware that a chance encounter was about to change everything. In 1984, everything shifted. Dudikoff met Steve James, a legitimate martial artist and actor who'd already made a name in the action world. They hit it off immediately, that rare chemistry where two people just click. James saw something in Dudikoff that nobody else had noticed, some untapped potential, some quality that couldn't be taught in acting classes. When Canon Films started looking for leads for their new martial arts project, a low-budget film that would either launch careers or disappear without a trace, Steve James made a call. That call would launch Dudikoff into international superstardom and plant the seeds for Hollywood's most forgotten betrayal. Because in this industry, sometimes the people who lift you up are the only ones who really see your worth. And sometimes the people who promise you the world are already drowning themselves. The Canon Films. Gamble. Canon Films in the 1980s was run by two Israeli cousins, Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus, who operated with a philosophy that would make modern studios have heart attacks. Make it cheap, make it fast, and if it looks cool on the poster, audiences will show up. They cranked out action films like a factory, and while major studios looked down on them, Canon was making millions. In 1984, they had a project called American Ninja. The script was simple. A mysterious American soldier with ninja skills fights an evil arms dealer in the Philippines. They needed someone who could carry the film, someone with presence, someone audiences would believe as an unstoppable warrior. The problem was budget. They couldn't afford established martial arts stars like Chuck Norris or Steven Seagal, who by 1984 was teaching Aikido to celebrities but hadn't broken into films yet. Michael Dudikoff walked into the audition with zero martial arts training. Let me repeat that. Zero. The man auditioning for a film called American Ninja had never studied karate, kung fu, or any fighting style. What he had was screen presence. He had that quiet intensity that made you believe he could be dangerous without saying a word. He had looks that worked on international markets. And most importantly, he was cheap. Canon took an insane gamble. They cast Dudikoff as Joe Armstrong, gave him a crash course in martial arts choreography, and paired him with Steve James, who had legitimate fighting credentials. The chemistry between them was instant. James brought the technical skill, Dudikoff brought the mysterious cool factor, and together they created something Canon never expected. American Ninja, released in August 1985, exploded. It cost under $1 million to make. It earned over $10 million in the United States alone, and internationally, it became a phenomenon. In Europe, Asia, and South America, Michael Dudikoff's face was suddenly everywhere. The film spawned 4 sequels, making it one of Canon's most successful franchises ever. But here's the kicker. While Dudikoff was becoming an international action star, Hollywood still saw him as just another Canon Films guy. The same industry that would later worship actors like Keanu Reeves for doing similar martial arts films looked at Dudikoff and saw disposable B-movie talent. They were already writing him off before he'd even peaked. Rise of the American Ninja. When American Ninja hit theaters in 1985, something unexpected happened. Audiences didn't just like Michael Dudikoff. They connected with him in a way that caught everyone off guard, including Canon Films, who'd gambled everything on an unknown with zero martial arts background. His character, Joe Armstrong, was different from other action heroes of the era. He wasn't loud and muscles forward like Schwarzenegger, barking one-liners between explosions. He wasn't cocky and invincible like Stallone, who always seemed to know he'd win before the fight even started. Joe Armstrong was quiet, almost damaged, a soldier with amnesia who fought precision and zero wasted movement. He was vulnerable in a way that action heroes weren't supposed to be. Dudikoff brought an authenticity to the role that transcended his lack of formal martial arts training. The fight choreography, handled by experts who'd worked in Hong Kong cinema, made him look absolutely lethal. Every kick landed with purpose. Every punch told a story. But it was his screen presence, that wounded intensity burning behind his eyes, that made audiences believe this man had genuinely suffered and was channeling that pain into every fight. Within months, American Ninja became one of the top-rented VHS tapes in America, sitting on blockbuster shelves right next to Rambo and The Terminator. In international markets, it dominated completely. Germany went insane for it. France couldn't get enough. Japan, a country with its own rich martial arts cinema, embraced this American version of their heroes. Canon Films immediately greenlit American Ninja 2, The Confrontation. They didn't wait. They didn't overthink it. They knew they had something special and moved fast before the moment passed. Released in 1987, it reunited Dudikoff and Steve James, and somehow, against all odds, did even better than the original. The formula was perfected by this point. Exotic locations that made every frame feel like an adventure. Brutal fight scenes that pushed boundaries for what audiences expected from low-budget action. And Dudikoff's character evolving from mysterious loner to genuine hero, showing range that surprised critics who'd written him off as just another pretty face. The film made millions and cemented Dudikoff as Canon's most bankable star, the one name that guaranteed international box office. By 1988, Michael Dudikoff was one of the biggest action stars in the world, but only if you looked outside America. That's the part Hollywood conveniently forgot. In Germany, France, Japan, and the Philippines, his films sold out theaters. Posters with his face covered entire buildings in Manila and Bangkok. He received fan mail from every continent, thousands of letters from people whose lives were changed by seeing an American action hero who wasn't just muscles and machismo. The money was rolling in. Canon signed him to multi-picture deals worth millions. He starred in Platoon Leader, River of Death, and American Ninja 3. Blood Hunt, churning out hits that literally kept Canon Films afloat during their roughest financial periods. Now, compare his trajectory to other action stars of the exact same era. Jean-Claude Van Damme, who broke through with Bloodsport in 1988, was immediately getting major studio attention from Universal and Warner Brothers. Steven Seagal, who debuted with Above the Law the same year, landed a Warner Brothers deal before his first film even finished its theatrical run. Both men had legitimate martial arts credentials that Hollywood respected. Black belts, tournament wins, decades of training. But here's the thing that should make you angry. Dudikoff, despite having bigger box office numbers than both of them internationally, despite proving he could carry franchises, couldn't break through to mainstream American success. The industry whispered the same thing behind closed doors and in executive meetings. He's just a Canon guy. He's not a real martial artist. He's for overseas markets, not domestic prestige. While Van Damme was being groomed for Universal Soldier, and Siegel was getting under siege with a $100 million budget, Dudikoff remained locked in Canon's direct-to-video universe, making films for a fraction of what his peers were getting. But he didn't care yet, because Canon was about to promise him something that would make all of that irrelevant. Something that would prove he belonged at the top table with the biggest stars in Hollywood. The Spider-Man promise. Here's where the story gets wild. In the mid-1980s, Canon Films was expanding beyond low-budget action films. Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus wanted legitimacy. They wanted to compete with major studios, so they started acquiring rights to major properties. Superman 4, Masters of the Universe, Captain America. And in 1986, they bought the film rights to Spider-Man from Marvel Comics. At the time, Spider-Man was the most popular superhero in the world, even bigger than Batman. Marvel was desperate to see their flagship character on the big screen, and Canon promised them a blockbuster. They hired writers, they commissioned scripts. Joseph Zito, who directed Chuck Norris and Missings in Action, was attached to direct. Bob Hoskins was rumored for Dr. Octopus. This wasn't some cheap cash grab. Canon genuinely believed they were making the next Superman, and they wanted Michael Dudikoff to be Peter Parker. According to multiple sources close to the production, Dudikoff had meetings with Canon executives where they explicitly told him Spider-Man was his. They'd built him up with American Ninja, proven he could carry a franchise, and now they were giving him the role that would make him a household name in America. Not just an international action star, but a legitimate A-lister, the next Christopher Reeve. Think about that for a second. Michael Dudikoff as Spider-Man in 1989 or 1990. It actually made sense. He had the build, the youth, the everyman quality that Peter Parker needed. He could handle action scenes. International markets already loved him, which meant built-in foreign box office. And Canon had proven with Superman 4 that they could secure wide American theatrical releases. But here's the thing. While Canon was promising Dudikoff the moon, the ground beneath them was already cracking. The company was hemorrhaging money. Superman 4 bombed catastrophically in 1987. Masters of the Universe lost millions. They'd overextended themselves trying to compete with major studios, and their low-budget action formula that had made them successful was being cannibalized by their own ambitions. By 1988, Canon Films was in serious financial trouble. Then came the split. Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus, the cousins who built Canon together, had a falling out. The details were messy, but the result was simple. Golan left to form 21st Century Film Corporation. Globus kept Canon, and all those big properties they'd acquired, including Spider-Man, became weapons in a legal and financial war. Spider-Man rights were sold, resold, traded, and fought over in courts for years. Golan claimed he had the rights. Globus claimed they belonged to Canon. Marvel wanted them back. Sony was circling. It became a nightmare of litigation that wouldn't be resolved until the early 2000s when Sam Raimi finally made Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire. Michael Dudikoff watched his promised role disappear into legal quicksand. The meetings stopped. The phone calls ended. Canon executives who'd looked him in the eye and promised him Spider-Man now avoided him completely. And the worst part? There was nothing he could do about it. The promise had been verbal, no contract, no guarantee, just words that evaporated the moment Canon collapsed. By 1991, Canon Films was effectively dead. Globus sold off pieces, bankruptcy loomed, and Michael Dudikoff, the man who'd made the millions, was left holding nothing but a career that was about to fall apart. The fall from grace. When Canon collapsed, Michael Dudikoff's career didn't just slow down. It hit a wall at full speed. The infrastructure that had supported him, international distribution, marketing budgets, theatrical releases vanished overnight. Suddenly, the man who'd starred in films that made tens of millions globally couldn't get a major studio to return his agent's calls. The industry had already made up its mind about him. He was a Canon Films product, direct-to-video talent, not a real action star like Van Damme or Seagal, both of whom were getting $3 million paychecks and theatrical releases from Warner Brothers and Universal. Dudikoff was getting offered $150,000 for films that would go straight to VHS shelves. He tried to fight it. In 1991, he starred in The Human Shield, a hostage rescue film that Canon desperately tried to market as his breakout into serious action filmmaking. It went nowhere. He did Ring of Steel in 1994, hoping the fight choreography would remind people why American Ninja worked. Nobody cared. By the mid-90s, Michael Dudikoff was doing what every forgotten action star eventually does, taking whatever work came his way just to stay visible. Here's what makes his fall so brutal. Compare his career to David Carradine, another martial arts actor who'd peaked in the 70s with Kung Fu. When Carradine's star faded, he built a successful second career doing B-movies and cult films, eventually earning a comeback with Kill Bill in 2003. Or look at Dolph Lundgren, another 80s action star who found a lane doing DTV films while maintaining respect and occasional theatrical releases. Dudikoff couldn't even secure that level of survival. The roles dried up almost completely. He appeared in Soldier Boys in 1995, a low-budget military film that barely registered. He did Strategic Command in 1997, playing a terrorist on a hijacked plane, a role so far removed from heroic Joe Armstrong that it felt like Hollywood was deliberately humiliating him. The typecasting was suffocating. Every script offered was either a poor man's version of American Ninja or a generic tough guy role with zero depth. Directors who'd never worked with him had already decided he couldn't act, that he was just a pretty face who got lucky with Canon's marketing machine. The fact that he'd carried multiple successful franchises meant nothing. His international box office numbers, irrelevant. Hollywood had placed him in a box and welded it shut. And here's the cruelest irony. While Dudikoff was being erased, 1998 saw the release of Blade, a Marvel film starring Wesley Snipes that proved superhero movies could work with the right star and vision. Then came X-Men in 2000, Spider-Man in 2002, and suddenly the entire industry was chasing comic book adaptations. The genre Dudikoff had been promised a crown in was exploding, and he was nowhere near it. He'd been promised Spider-Man in 1989. By 2002, Tobey Maguire was playing Peter Parker in the biggest film of the year, and Michael Dudikoff was completely forgotten. The man who'd been told he was Canon's future was now a cautionary tale about what happens when you hitch your career to the wrong studio. By the early 2000s, Michael Dudikoff had effectively walked away from Hollywood, not with some dramatic announcement or bitter tell-all book. He just quietly stepped back, choosing a life that had nothing to do with cameras or red carpets or broken promises. He settled down, got married, started a family. While other forgotten action stars chased relevance through reality shows or celebrity boxing matches, Dudikoff disappeared into normalcy. Friends and former co-workers described him as remarkably well-adjusted for someone who'd been chewed up and spit out by the industry. He didn't drink himself into oblivion like so many failed stars. He didn't develop drug problems or financial scandals. He just walked away and built something real. In interviews conducted years later, Dudikoff spoke about his career with surprising clarity and zero bitterness. He acknowledged that American Ninja changed his life and gave him opportunities most actors never get. He praised Steve James, who passed away in 1993 from pancreatic cancer, calling him a brother and the heart of those films. He admitted that Canon's collapse hurt, especially losing Spider-Man, but he also recognized that sometimes the industry just moves on. What's fascinating is how he viewed the Spider-Man promise in retrospect. In a rare 2010 interview, he said something that cuts to the bone of Hollywood's cruelty. They promised me a lot of things. Some happened, most didn't. That's the business. You can't build a life on promises from people who are drowning themselves. Canon was sinking, and they were grabbing at anything to feel like they were still swimming. I was just one of the things they grabbed. He occasionally appeared at fan conventions, where American Ninja still had a devoted cult following. Fans from around the world would line up to meet him, telling him those films changed their lives, inspired them to train in martial arts. gave them heroes who looked like them in international markets where American action stars were rare. Dudikoff was always gracious, always present, never acting like he was above the love people still had for his work. In 2015, he made a brief return to acting with The Bounty Killer, a small independent film that barely registered. He followed it with a few more minor projects, but it was clear his heart wasn't in it anymore. He'd found peace outside the industry, and coming back felt more like a favor to friends than genuine desire. Today, Michael Dudikoff lives a quiet life, largely out of the public eye. He doesn't maintain social media presence. He doesn't chase podcast interviews or YouTube appearances. For a man who was once promised he'd be one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, he seems remarkably content being nobody special. And maybe that's the real victory. He survived an industry designed to destroy people who don't stay on top. The what-if question. Here's the question that haunts Michael Dudikoff's career. What if Canon Films hadn't collapsed? What if they'd actually made Spider-Man with him in the lead? Would we be living in a completely different timeline where Dudikoff is a household name, where his face launched a billion-dollar franchise, where he's the one getting called for Avengers movies? The answer is complicated, but let's play it out. If Canon had somehow stabilized financially and produced Spider-Man in 1990 with Dudikoff as Peter Parker, the film probably would have been rough. Canon's track record with big-budget productions was terrible. Superman 4 was a disaster. But here's the thing about Spider-Man. The character is so inherently appealing that even a flawed version might have connected with audiences. Dudikoff had the look. He had youth. He was only 36 in 1990, younger than Tobey Maguire was when Sam Raimi cast him. He had action credibility from American Ninja. He had international box office appeal. And most importantly, he had that wounded outsider quality that Peter Parker needs. Joe Armstrong and Peter Parker aren't that different. Both are orphans with secret identities trying to do right in a world that misunderstands them. If Canon's Spider-Man had been even moderately successful, Dudikoff's entire trajectory changes. Suddenly, he's not just an action star. He's a superhero star at the exact moment Hollywood was figuring out that superhero films could print money. He could have been in the conversation for Batman. He definitely would have been considered for every Marvel property throughout the 90s. X-Men, Blade, even early Iron Man discussions. But that didn't happen. And the reason it didn't happen reveals everything wrong with how Hollywood treats talent. Dudikoff's career was entirely dependent on one studio's financial health. When Canon died, he had no backup plan because the industry had already decided he wasn't worth investing in. They had labeled him B-movie material, based not on his talent or box office numbers, but on which company had signed him first. Compare that to how major studios protect their investments. When Universal signed Van Damme, they made sure he had multiple projects in development. When Warner Brothers grabbed Siegel, they built franchises around him. Dudikoff never got that institutional support because Canon was always one bad film away from bankruptcy. The Spider-Man promise was the cruelest thing Canon could have done to him. They gave him hope that he was breaking through to the next level, that all those years of international success were finally going to translate into American recognition. Then, they ripped it away without warning or apology, leaving him to watch the industry move on without him. Here's the legacy Hollywood doesn't want to acknowledge. Michael Dudikoff was good enough. He carried successful franchises. He had international appeal. He connected with audiences across cultures. The only thing he didn't have was luck in choosing which studio to trust. And in an industry that pretends merit determines success, that truth is uncomfortable. The final strike. The story of Michael Dudikoff isn't about a star who flamed out because of drugs or ego or lack of talent. It's about a system that builds you up just to knock you down the moment you're no longer profitable. It's about promises that mean nothing when the people making them are desperate. It's about how Hollywood decides who deserves redemption and who deserves to be erased. Wesley Snipes went to federal prison for tax evasion and came back to break Guinness World Records in Deadpool and Wolverine. Robert Downey Jr. battled addiction and became Iron Man. Ben Affleck survived multiple career disasters to play Batman. But Michael Dudikoff, whose only crime was trusting the wrong studio, never got his second chance. Maybe it's because he never fought for it. Maybe it's because he chose family and peace over clawing his way back. Or maybe it's because Hollywood never saw him as worth saving in the first place. Whatever the reason, his story stands as proof that talent, box office success, and international fame mean nothing if you're not in the right rooms when decisions get made. So, what do you think? Should Michael Dudikoff have gotten his Spider-Man movie? Would it have changed superhero cinema forever?